Welcome back. The Cases Center for New Yorkers involved in the criminal justice system officially opened its new office in the South Bronx, which is expected to serve 1,500 people annually. Cases services for mental health treatment, pretrial support, youth engagement, court liaison services, and more used to be scattered around the borough. But this new office is designed to be a one-stop shop. We are joined by Jonathan McLean, the CEO of Cases. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So to start off, let's talk about Cases, the overall mission and the inspiration behind it.
So our mission is to help at-risk people get the services and supports they need so that they don't end up in the criminal legal system. And for those who have been touched by that system, our mission is to ensure that they no longer go back in it, stay out of it, and get the services that they need so that they can become and maintain themselves as productive members of our society.
And so later on in the interview, we're going to kind of break down all the services and everything offered. But in a nutshell, how would you say that your team works to bring this mission to fruition?
Well, we provide a myriad of services to support people who are in need. And, you know, I always tell people we predominantly serve black and brown marginalized people in New York City. We believe we bring the work to people with humanity, dignity, and the canned concern of people who have an intimate understanding of what this system does to people.
Speaking of what the system does to people, let's talk about the impact that the criminal justice system has on communities of color and people living with mental illness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's horrible. I mean, I think we are in an age where black and brown people continue to be disproportionately impacted by the criminal legal system. I think in New York City, it's unconscionable that a third of the black men in this city by the age of 38 have been touched by the criminal legal system, either jail, prison, or arrest. I think it's unconscionable that half the population of Rikers Island are people living with mental illnesses. So if you're poor, if you're black, if you're Latino, and you live in this city and you come from a marginalized community, you're at risk.
Absolutely. And previously, you've stepped into roles including, work in clinical and youth programs. So tell me a little bit about how that has prepared you for the role that you play now at Cases.
I think the biggest lesson from working in those roles is the realization that no one's life plays out in a vacuum. Unfortunately, in this case, all roads tend to lead to the path. And the children in child welfare and foster care ultimately become the adults in the criminal legal system, the homeless system. And the through line is poverty, race, and class. And that is a tragedy. To live in a city so well resourced and to have so many poor marginalized people at such risk.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk about this new location. It's supposed to be a, one-stop shop for all of the services that we had mentioned earlier. So tell me a little bit about this decision to open one up here in the South Bronx.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that we say at Cases is that service provision shouldn't be a hardship on the people receiving services. And unfortunately, that isn't always the case. We serve people throughout the city. And many of the people that we serve, many of the people that receive the services that we provide live here in the Bronx. And I think more often than not, people don't realize how difficult it is for people logistically to move around the city. If you're living on the fringes and you don't have money, paying an extra fare is difficult. If you have to catch a bus or a train, if you are trying to raise your family, work, and you've got a provider on one side of the city and another on the other side of the city, it's challenging. So we're so excited to bring a location to the Bronx that allows the people that we serve in this community to be able to receive many of their services in the same space.
I think that's so important. And like you mentioned, it shouldn't be hard to find all of these services because in the end, it disrupts everything. And at some point when it gets so hard, you figure, why try anyways?
Absolutely.
So with that, when somebody comes in for the first time to enlist in services from Cases, what can they expect?
Like I said, I think they can expect humanity. One of the things that we value tremendously is the lived experience of many of the people that work in our organization. So we hire peers, we hire people who are credible messengers. all of those things create an environment where you not only are going to get someone who's going to provide you with a service, but you're going to work with someone who intimately understands you and where you're coming from. They may not know what you are dealing with in your life and what your struggle is, but they've walked the same kind of roads, and they can empathize and support people throughout that struggle if you're coming to cases and getting services.
Absolutely. And one of the main, I guess, missions are to help serve people with, mental health issues and mental illnesses. And
criminal legal involvement.
yes. And so in New York City, but more specifically in the Bronx, we're seeing a lot of criminalization of mental illness. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, again, it's horrible. I mean, I think jails and prisons should not be the de facto treatment facility for people living with mental illness. And if, again, you look at Rikers Island, more than half the population are people living with mental illnesses.
Right.
I think 1 in 4 have a serious mental illness. So it shows us that, we found ourselves looking at jails and prisons as the catch-all or the de facto treatment option for people living with mental illness. And it really illustrates what we're struggling with in this society, not prioritizing the kind of services and support that get people the help that they need so that they don't end up in places like prisons and jails.
Right, right. And, let's also talk about the changes that cases have made to help implement regarding the use of cash bail in pretrial detention.
Yeah, so we're big proponents of the holistic view of public safety. You cannot have public safety if you are not investing in people. And we've worked very hard to reduce the prison population, the jail population in the city. We run a program in Manhattan called Supervised Release, which has come out of bail reform. And there's a lot of misconceptions about bail reform.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we really do, and the fact actually is that most people who have been arrested, they go to court without incident. They fight their cases without incident, maintain their jobs, stay connected to their families, live in the communities, and are not rearrested. And what we do in Manhattan Supervised Release is we support people around that. We make sure that we identify people's needs who are arrested, get them the services that they need, give them the reminders, make sure that they get to court in time, and for the most part, get people to where they need to be as they are fighting their cases. No longer, we don't want to live in a city anymore where being poor is a prerequisite for going to Rikers Island.
Absolutely. It's, unfortunately, when you fall on economic hardships, it just makes things that much harder, and we had spoken about that, whether it's trying to get to the services that you need or paying, bail. So I think it's really important in what cases is doing. And so with that, can we talk a little bit about, we spoke a little bit about early in the interview with those who struggle with mental health illness. So let's talk about in what ways these cases support individuals with serious mental illness to achieve wellness in the community.
No, that's a great question. So we have a continuum of behavioral health services, mental health services for people who are living in a community. Just want to highlight 2 programs. We have an extensive mobile treatment network of programs out in the community. So we have 17 mobile treatment teams that are ostensibly programs that take the walls out of a mental health clinic and bring the services to people in vivo. So if you're living in a shelter and you can't make it to the people, traditionally many black and brown marginalized people don't do well in traditional outpatient treatment settings.
Right.
So we bring these services to them. We work with some of the most difficult to reach people, some of the most seriously mental ill people in the city, and we bring the psychiatrist, the doctor, the social worker to them. If people are struggling with housing, we make the connections, and we stay connected to them no matter where they live and what they do. Another thing that we have is a really unique program. It's called the Nathaniel Act program, and it is the only assertive community treatment team in the city that is an alternative to incarceration program. Usually if you want to get an ACT team, you have to go through SPOA, but for Nathaniel Act, you can actually get those services coming through court. So we're catching people who are being diverted to court, to jail, primarily because they have a mental health issue, and trying to get them the services as opposed to having jails and prisons be the de facto treatment option.
I was actually going to ask next about these alternatives. Before we do, can you tell me a little bit about maybe what has the feedback and outcomes been from these programs?
The outcomes have been great. I mean, I think it's a well-established fact that if you don't invest in people, you're going to repeat the cycles in terms of people going to jails and prisons You know, I'm a Brooklyn kid, and I came up doing mass incarceration, and that clearly doesn't work. So you've got to take the time and the energy to invest in people, which is what we need to do to invest in communities. Invest in people, then you're investing in communities. So the outcomes have been promising, but I think there's an underinvestment in these services. We have way more need than we have mobile outreach teams, and we have way more need than we have services that support people pre and post adjudication.
So is there any way for the community to help get involved, maybe with cases in a volunteer position or just in a way to help provide that outreach?
Absolutely. We encourage people to go to our website. There are a number of ways to get involved. You can donate. We are developing an associate board where people who are interested in trustee work can get involved. I would encourage people to go to the website, reach out to me, contact cases, and we will find a way to get people in the community involved in services. And I would say, listen, if you see something you like and you're eligible, apply. We always want people to come work with us and work for us so we can continue to do this good work.
Absolutely. And now getting back to the alternatives, can you provide examples of community-based alternatives to jail and prison that cases have developed and promoted?
Absolutely. So one is the program that I mentioned earlier, Nathaniel Act. And then the other is a program called PACT, Planning Alternatives to Creating Community. It is a program that is primarily geared to young people who've been arrested, and it's designed to provide them with the kind of intensive services and supports that they need to keep them from moving further into the criminal legal system. So these are young people who are on the fringes, who are on the precipice of falling into the system, and the idea is to catch them and get them the right intervention at the right time so that they don't move into a life of prisons, jails, and homelessness, and all of the other things that come with this system.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, with that, I want to thank you so much for coming today and sharing all the services that cases have to offer.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So to learn more about cases and services, for more information about their new Bronx location, please visit the website at cases.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the Recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Fios 33, or watch anytime on the web at BronxNet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Brittany Skyler, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.